BitChute, Odyssey, and podcast. So we are live, and as you know, our channel is being garbled up by the powers that be. But we get to be responsible in the classroom, and we get to tag and text and call and let everybody know that we're going to be talking about how to raise healthy children. So I'm going to go ahead and start the record button for all of you that are watching later on. Today, we're going to have a wonderful class with Matt Beaudreau. And all of you need to take lots of notes. And so fasten your seatbelt. Let's get in the moment, because when you get in the moment, you got to do something that gets you out of the future or the past. So it's time to dance. Here we go. I forgot to tell you that, Matt.
I love it. Okay. Right up my alley, my friend.
Okay, here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for
you. This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Okay, it wasn't going to let me unmute. See, this is what happens in the classroom. We never know what you're going to get. So you got to roll with the flow up to a certain point. But I am so glad we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning into the classroom for the first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, for many of us, we've raised our children. My baby is 32 years old. And now we have grandchildren that are moving up. And so if you find yourself actively raising children, whether you're a parent or a grandparent, I just want to know, what is it that you feel you are doing to create healthy children that will later become an incredible whole adult? So there's lots of things that we've done in our past, and we can look back and say, yeah, I could have done that different. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't do it. Now we're seeing our children raise their children, perhaps. And you're going, man, they're so hard, or maybe they're not hard enough, or we have our judgments. Well, today we have career educator Matt Beaudreau, who is in the classroom because he is very passionate about one and done, getting it right the first time. But what is right to you may not be what's right for me. So today we're going to have this conversation about how we can raise these beautiful young humans to be whole adults. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Matt Beaudreau is here to do just that. Welcome to the classroom, Matt.
I am grateful as well, my friend. I got to tell you, I get to do, I have the honor of doing multiple shows every week. That intro got me fired up right there. I love it. You're doing a phenomenal job. So this is awesome, man. I'm more fired up than usual. This is great. I appreciate you having me very much.
Awesome. I'm glad that you're here. I actually saw your TED Talks that you've done. I see your passion. I was introduced to you by a mutual acquaintance of ours, and I'm thinking, you know what? This conversation is never too late. It is
Mhm.
never too late a conversation, because even if you didn't have great parenting skills, we can parent ourselves by learning and rewriting the program, which is what I do in my workshops that I put together. And, rewriting the program is so important. But before we go there, share a little bit about your background and what led you to this passion, Matt.
Yeah, I have what Naval Ravikant calls, a very unique experience, right? And unique perspective. So I was in education for a long time. And so I got to know the game very well. So I always say game very, very intentionally. But I learned the game at a high level. Was at Stanford University for a long time, was a public school teacher, a public school administrator, private school teacher, private school administrator, which is why I left all of those to start the schools that I start. But I also had the opportunity to be a keynote speaker around the world and work with Fortune 500. So I've gotten to speak to, 250,000 people under that moniker for a long time. And so all of it was around young humans. Obviously, working in the schools, we're working with, raising these young heroes. And as I'm speaking to the Fortune 500 companies, I'm speaking to them exactly about that. They're saying, hey, we're hiring all these young people out of college and we want to fire all of them. They're not, they're really, really smart. They got great grades. They came from the Harvard, the Stanfords, the MITs, but we want to boot them all. Help us understand what's going on. Again, so I think it's there are these cultural things that I was seeing and these parental things that I was seeing and educational things that I was seeing that made me go, okay, well, I've got kids of my own. I'm going to start schools that make sense. My kids are going to go there. They're never going to see anything else. And then I want to help other people do the same. So, I've gotten the opportunity to start a number of schools around the world. I still help entrepreneurs start these schools around the world. And then I help parents understand how to, educate from a world-class level at home and mentor young people. So my entire mission is raising young dragon slayers in a time when dragons absolutely exist.
I love your mission. I love your mission. And I truly believe that when you raise a child to be responsible, confident, loving, kind, gentle, and allow the freedom to fail, allow the freedom to learn from their own personal experiences, and I wish I would have had that kind of awareness when I was raising my kids. I raised my kids from fear, because I was
Sure.
raised in fear. Like, if you do this, what if you get hurt? What if you but that all changed for me when I reached my mid to late 40s and started this classroom 11 years ago. And I'm thinking, it's time to change. It's time to rewrite this programming, because if we continue doing this, then our future is going to be what we're seeing today. If we don't stop what's happening today, then it's going to be very, very difficult for anyone to survive on their own. So share a little bit about what you're seeing in some of these schools that is different in your schools.
And I appreciate what you're saying on that too. And I want to make sure that the caveat is put out there, because you're right. Most people do, I believe, parent in fear. And I want everybody listening to understand there is no such thing as a perfect parent. I'm far from it. You're far from it. Everybody's far from it. So we're all going to mess something up. But there are ways to not parent in fear, and there are ways to do it well. And so that's kind of what we're talking about, right? And
Correct.
so, as far as the difference between the schools we're opening, the traditional schools, the schools that you and I grew up going to, what I call conveyor belt schools. And by the way, another caveat, I'm a huge fan of good humans who are teachers and administrators.
Yes.
I am not ever attacking you. I want to support you in any way I can. I am not a fan of the systems that we have our young people in, right? And so that speaks to the government schools, but it also speaks to most private schools, because most private schools operate the exact same way. And the problems around these conveyor belt schoolings are many, but one, it teaches a very permission-based mindset, right? Even 18 years old and you're raising your hand to ask somebody else to go to the bathroom and they might say no, right? Which is crazy. It teaches that life works in subjects. It teaches that failure is to be avoided at all costs. It teaches you that you need to be blindly obedient to anybody who claims authority. It teaches you to be an apathetic bystander in your own life while somebody else writes the script and kind of makes you a background actor in your own life. It teaches you to only incorporate with people of what I call your same date of manufacture, right? You're only working with people that are your same age. There are a lot of these social constructs that are very, very sneaky, that are ingrained in the system. And you go through it, 12 years, 14 years, 16 years, 18 years, whatever that is. Those are habits. Those are mindset habits that are not readily broken later. And the irony is, so many people come out of that system and then they feel like they are incapable of understanding who they are or what genius they have or what they can do in the world. They still don't have any self-awareness. And then they'll have their own kids, and instead of realizing, okay, well, this didn't really actually prepare me, they feel ill-equipped to then educate their own kid, and they'll put their own kid back in that system, right? So it is this self-perpetuating cycle. The schools we build, I'm glad to go into those. I don't want to ramble, but the schools we build are completely 180 degrees different. Completely different. You get personal responsibility early. You are setting your own individualized goals early. You are working together with people who are older than you, who are younger than you. You are taking on jobs. You are collaborating on real world projects. You are having civil discourse, and you understand what good conversations look like. You are starting businesses, whether you're 5, 18, anywhere in between. You're taking those businesses into perpetuity. We have high school students at some of our campus that are making 6 figures in their business while they're in high school. Wow. I always tell people, the ideal day on our campus is that none of the adults show up, none of the students notice, nothing changes, and they still operate like a Fortune 500 company. And people go, oh, that's really cute. And I go, no, we actually can do that. We can actually get that done. And our young heroes are wildly capable. And they go, of course they're capable. And that's really, they can be anything they want to be. I go, no, let me tell you, I have horses on my ranch. I have horses because my daughters bought the horses with the money they made from their businesses when they were 9 and 7.
Wow.
So when I'm talking about we do things differently, we do things differently. And it's not that we're adding more or adding some sort of magic fairy dust. We're taking away all of the nonsense and all of the wasted time that conveyor belt school is built upon. And we're creating an environment that allows young heroes to do what they do naturally, which is thrive. It allows them to be the genius they were designed to be.
I love it. I love it. So I want to tap into that word responsibility, because if you were to take one word to describe this classroom, it is the word responsibility. But my responsibility has nothing to do with fault, blame, shame, or duty. It has everything to do with empowerment and freedom. I just want to make sure that when people hear the word responsibility, that it's not fine, I'll do it because nobody else will do it. That's kind of a victim. But what I'm talking about is empowerment and freedom. Listen, if it's going to happen, I'm going to be the one that's going to create it. That's the kind of responsibility that I want to project here today. My registered service mark is you can take a pill or you can take responsibility. It's not that I'm against the pill, it's that I'm for doing whatever it takes to get the job done, to get it done, whether it's health, spirit, mind, or body. So that being said, I want to go back to some of my reflections on children today, on our younger humans, our future leaders.
Right.
They have very little eye contact. They can't formulate a sentence. Most of them have speech impediments and or have some issue with behavior, and they're being medicalized even sooner. They watch too much television, are watching too much phones. They get their phones when they're very little. So tell me, as a parent raising children, and nowadays where there's this pressure to keep up with the Joneses and compare, what is this person doing with this person? Why am I not getting a phone? Why are they getting to watch television all day and I don't get to watch television? What is your advice to the adults in the room that are supposed to shepherd the children? What is your advice?
Yeah, that's right. So and I love the way you frame that, because the reality is this: it starts with the adult. Right. It starts there. You as the adult having your own stuff together. I can't say, hey, stop whining and stop being a victim to my kids. And I don't talk to them like that in this, but I can't say that if then they see me and hear me go, oh my gosh, my boss this, and I just can't get a break here. And right. That's called hypocrisy. And young people pick up on that quickly.
Big time.
Right. I can't say, hey, no phones at the table. What are you doing? And then I'm at the table doing this.
Mm-hmm.
That's called hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
So get your own stuff together. I was talking to a group of dads a while back, and I said, how many of you would die for your kids? And every hand went up. Mm-hmm. And I said, I believe you would. I believe you would 100%. How many of you would live for your kids? Live intentionally. That's harder. You don't only have to die for them once, because you could only do it once. Yes. You have to live for them every single day. So that's the thing with parents is you've got to live for them. You've got to set these boundaries and you've got to live by it, and you've got to stay consistent with it. Right. So, all those problems we were talking about, the young heroes are, nutritionally defunct. They're not being fed good food. They're not being given opportunities to get outside. They are being handed the latest toy that's keeping them ostracized from society. All of those things are playing, they're being over medicated. All of those things are playing into the issues we're seeing with our young heroes. And quite literally, the parents just have to step it up and go the other way. If you make that consistent, you normalize what you normalize. So if you make that normal and you have conversations with your young heroes, they understand the why. My kids don't ever feel left out that they don't have cell phones. My kids don't feel left out that they eat healthy. They love it. They love the fact that they know how to make good nutritional choices, that they go outside intentionally and get some sun, that they drive their own educational endeavors. They love it. They take pride in it. They take pride in shouldering as much responsibility as they can. They don't feel like they're missing out. They feel like that's what's normal because they understand it's going to help them achieve and find purpose, and that purpose is ultimately going to lead to happiness, right? But it's because we have cultivated those conversations every single day, and we lead by example every single day. Do we mess up? Of course we do. Do we get right back on it? You bet we do. That's right. Simplicity and consistency are your friends there. So that's, I would encourage the parents, even if you're like, oh my gosh, I've gone the other way on all that for years. Okay. Well, it's like you ate McDonald's every meal for years. Cool. So what? You just acquiesce and go, well, I guess I just have to eat McDonald's the rest of my life. No, you go, okay, I got to stop this and I got to stop it now. I got to switch things. I got to start eating the real food. It's the same thing. Maybe you haven't set these boundaries, but you sit down, you have a family meeting, you go, look, this is just as much for me as it is for you. I want you to hold me accountable on all of this as well. Let's do this journey together. That's what you need to do.
I love it. And I'm seeing, and this is not a judgment, because anyone who comes to my workshop, it's called the New Truth Series, I Am the Solution. And the I Am is the God in us. And solution is the acronym to kind of put everything together so we can workshop. And I find it more and more and more that we as parents, let me go back many, many years when my children were little kids. I did the best that I could with what I had. I did. I didn't intentionally set to harm my children in any way, by the way they ate, by the way they behaved, by the way I behaved, by the way what pattern, what example. We showed them some very strong values, and then it's up to them to accept or reject. And it's that at that point that we accept or reject these values that we determine what our life is going to be, right? And we now are affecting others along the way. And that's when we need to say, when we look at ourselves, because that's the only thing that we could change. When we look at ourselves and we say, okay, well, it's time for me to change so that I in turn can, St. Francis of Assisi said it best, preach the gospel at all times, if necessary, use words. Children watch everything we do. And it is so important that we change our lives, whether we're grandparents or parents or great grandparents. It's never too late for us to make some changes in our life. And when I was researching you, one of the things that stuck out, and I had mentioned this to you before we went on the air, is that, people don't have discipline or rules anymore in their home. And I had mentioned to you that my husband and I have a mission statement for our marriage. We believe so strongly that, you know, if we had a business together, we'd have a mission statement, we'd have rules to operate with, and we had those raising our children. I'm not saying we were perfect parents, because just recently my son told me I made him eat too much eggplant. And so with that in mind, you know, a big old flat failure, right? He hates eggplant to this day. And okay, I understand that. However, we do need to have rules, because we as parents sometimes don't have the discipline that we can in turn say to our kids, don't do this, have discipline, because, you know, do as I say, not as I do, doesn't work. So let's talk about some of these rules and guidelines that you have in your school that have translated to your family, and how you were able to work together as a family to create these rules.
I love that. Yeah. And you're right. You know, I always tell parents, young people will do what you do before they do what you say. Right. So that's the whole leading by example kind of thing again. And I also love that you're using that word discipline, because that's another word, you know, kind of like you redefined responsibility at the beginning of this. Discipline, same thing. People come to me all the time and they go, oh my gosh, how do you, your kids do look me in the eye, they're shaking hands. Like, how do you discipline your kids? And what I tell them is I don't. I've taught them to be disciplined humans, and that's a different thing, right? I'm not disciplining them. It's not something I'm doing to, it's something I'm leading by example, and it's a foundation that we are establishing. So those foundations come in that family contract, right? And I will take it to the schools first, because that's really where it came from. So the reason our schools are able to operate so efficiently with the young heroes leading the way, it's truly a learner-led environment, is because the first thing they do in any given year is they establish what they call their studio contracts. These are the contracts these are the non-negotiables for us. We are all agreeing to this. This is how we're going to operate. It's a set of values. It's a code that we are going to live by. And we're going to literally physically sign that code and have a ceremony around that. We hold that code to be sacred. And that way, if something's going on, and then I look over and, you know, and little Johnny over here is doing something that doesn't live by the code, and Lillian can go, hey, Johnny, you sign this. This is specifically what that says. You're doing this. That doesn't match. So we've got to talk about the accountability on that. Like, can you take personal responsibility for either changing it or take the natural consequence, you know? And it just gives them a foundation to have these kinds of conversations and makes very, very clear boundaries. So we do those in the studios. I simply went, okay, hey, family, we've got to do this at home too. What are our non-negotiables? What are our values? What do we want to define ourselves as a family, right? There's a vastly different thing when you identify with a code. It's like saying, you can say, hey, I'm somebody that eats vegetables and I avoid, meat products. Or you can say, I'm a vegan. And and I'm not a vegan personally. I'm just saying, I'm using this as an example. That is a very specific identifier. It's a code, right? Same thing. So we went, okay, what do we want our family code, our family values, the family rules that define us? What do we want those to be? Let's all agree upon those. We're going to literally list those out and put them on our wall. And then here's the key, parents. Yes, it's great to be able to go, hey, I can go to my son and go, hey, man, rule number 2 is to be a copycat. You want to copy somebody who has done this before you and follow their pattern of success. That's great that I can hold him accountable. He also can come to me and go, Dad, rule number 6, man, that's it's no complaining, fix it. You kind of sound like you're complaining right now. What do you want to do? And I have to go, yep, thank you. Thank you for calling me out on that. You're right, because we're on this journey together, and that's Beaudreau's don't complain. We find solutions. You're right. Thank you very much. That's the power of it right there, because then everybody's on this journey together. When you do that, and it just becomes what life is, you build different humans.
I love it. I love it. It's thinking outside the box. And I always say I live outside the box. I live outside the box because it's that yes that gets us outside the box. And I've said this before, I'm a shy extrovert. And so I could hide in my shyness and say, I'm private. I don't like to do this or that. I can hide there. Or I can say, you know what? I really didn't like that about me. And I just expanded my comfort zone. Now I'm unstoppable. So there's so many different ways that we put ourselves in this box. But what you're challenging, your beautiful humans, your little young minds that are unstoppable, that don't know they can't do something. They believe they can do all things, which is scriptural. And so all of a sudden the indoctrination starts. No, don't do this. Don't do this. Be quiet. Don't think. Don't cry. But let's talk about emotions before we go into the rules, because I know you said the copycat rule was number 2. But before we go into the rules, let's talk about emotional IQ, because how do you deal with crying, tantrums, and disappointments with the young children that you're help molding?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So one of the rules is actually to be an emotional ninja, and the way we define that is understanding. Yeah, and that's literally what it says: be an emotional ninja. It's rule number 3. But the way we define that is understanding that emotions are natural. To be happy, to be sad, to be upset, like that's a natural thing. But you have to be able to honor it, understand where it's coming from, and try to figure out, okay, well, then what does that mean for me? Where do I need to go next? What do I need to do to either change, get better, help? What is that? What are the next steps? Because you want to understand what those emotions are, why they're there, but not let them be the dictator of your life, of your next steps. And that's where we lose our youth. We go, okay, yes, it's okay to be sad. And they go, oh, okay, cool. And wait a second, now I'm getting a bunch of attention because I'm saying I'm sad. So gosh, maybe to get more attention, maybe I'll just perpetually be sad. And I'll just kind of live there. Right. And that's a dangerous thing too. So that's what we talk about. There is never, if there's a tantrum going on, that is a young person who is just feeling like they can't fully communicate something, or something is not being heard, or they're just using it as a manipulation because a boundary is not set. It's somewhere in there. So we honestly, I never had tantrums for my kids, because we always talked to them like adults. We listened to what they had to say. We gave them feedback, and then they had clear boundaries that, look, we're not going to get emotional. If you're throwing a tantrum, we're not going to come back and yell at you and give you this extra attention. We're going to let you know, here's the natural consequence around this. We just don't do that as a family. So, right. And so then those stopped. I mean, it just stopped. So now it's just healthy civil discourse around what's going on. So we honor the emotions and talk through the next steps. And it serves all of us well. And I think that's what more adults should get in the habit of doing that as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I've thrown a few tantrums lately.
Of course.
and every time I'm not proud of it. I'm telling you. And when I call it a tantrum, because I know I'm very patient. I'm very patient, but it's when I lose that patience and I find myself in that moment that I'm in my subconscious mind. I'm not even present. And so it's bringing yourself into that moment where you say, wow, this is not how I communicate typically, or this is not how or normally, something else is going on with me. Let me sit with that. And that's where people stop. They don't go that extra. Okay, this person is annoying me. What is it about that person that reminds me of the me that I don't want to look at? And where do I need to forgive this within me? And where am I getting validation for being a victim? Because it releases the same kind of endorphins as working out or falling in love or eating that nice piece of chocolate. So so when you have someone like that, because it's probably easier to deal with the children than it is with the parents at times, because the parents have their limiting beliefs. How do you deal with a parent who hasn't adopted this philosophy yet, but still wants their kids to do this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a very, very difficult thing. So we've got, on our campuses, we have a filtering system, for lack of a better word. And what we are, people go, oh, well, you're just picking and choosing what kids you want. Nope. We actually believe that young heroes are geniuses. We actually believe that is the natural state of the human being, is genius, is kindness, is love, is respect, is honor, is integrity, is honesty. It's all of those things. We think that's natural. What we're looking for are the parents mirroring that belief. That's what we're looking for. So when we do this filtering, unless there are some severe special needs that we really aren't equipped to help the young hero with, we're actually filtering more for the parents. Are they willing to have those beliefs? Are they willing to work on their own growth? Again, we're all messed up in some respect. That's fine. But we don't have to stay there. That's our responsibility, is to continue to get better. As long as we see a family that's going, hey, look, we want to get better too. We want growth, right? Then we're working to partner, because then we're talking about growth mindset all day with these young heroes and putting them in that environment. And then I do a lot of work with the parents themselves to make sure they're in that same mindset. I'll run meetings every week with the parents that are, entrepreneurs, just helping them around their businesses, right? Because if I can help them around their businesses and make sure they're feeling like their missions are being achieved, well, gosh, that trickles down into how they parent at home, right? And their mindset around that. So I'll help parents on that. I'll help parents on just, getting out of these limiting beliefs that they've got, and trying to figure out where those come from, and then trying to get a little bit of a roadmap of, okay, cool, what do you do next? What is it? Is it physical, spiritual, emotional? What is the next step for you? So I'll help parents on that too, because it is a collaborative journey on this. If we preach growth mindset all day on campus and the parents are squashing that at home, well, that young hero is the one that ends up losing.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
And
So
I've seen that way too many times. And I'm grateful that you're doing this. I wish that all school systems would adopt your philosophy. I know that we had Layla Setner in the classroom not too long ago, and boy, was she beaten up when she refused to
bow down,
take a stand on protecting her children that are in the school. And that's the tactic today. The cancel culture just keeps people, it's like the mob mentality, the mob rules. And that is not what we were intended to be. We were intended to be free thinkers and all of that. But somewhere along the way, I broke out of that mold. But unfortunately, I had already raised my children when that happened. Now it's their turn to travel that journey and us to live that example. And when we have, people in our home, we want to extend that love to people, but not everybody has been made free to live. Everybody's like, focused on, the next quick fix, and people, like whether it's nutrition or whatever, they'll say to me, oh yeah, no, we're all going to die about something, we're all going to die. And I always say to them, but how do you want to live? Which is basically, what you're talking about, you would die for your kid. That's only once, but how do you want to live for your kid? Will you live for your kid? I think that's beautiful. Before we get started on the rules, though, I want to just take a little break. I want all of you to know that if you have any questions for Matt today, and Matt, I didn't even ask you if you had extra time. We do have the Teacher's Pet Corner like 15 minutes after the class today, if you have that time. Just ask your questions, type in a Q, write your questions down. If you're watching at whenyouneedafriend.com, which is my website, now we're broadcasting live, because if somebody's going to shut us down, we'll still have a platform to go, which is our whenyouneedafriend.com. You can text me your questions at 407-373-5959. And so while you're at whenyouneedafriend.com, please subscribe, like, and follow me on all social media, especially BitChute and Odyssey. That's not censoring me. But make sure that you subscribe to the channel at whenyouneedafriend.com, because that way you'll know who is in the classroom. And if you are a subscriber already, you have all of Matt's information. You can click his name and it'll take you straight to his website, and you'll know exactly who's on. And then you get the audio sent to you every day so that you can listen to it at your own discretion, or you can watch it in your favorite podcast, wherever you'd like. Now, we also ask you, while you're there, check out my sponsors, support them the way that they're supporting the classroom. Because as you know, it's difficult to find a sponsor that fits the mindset, because I'm not going to promote someone that brings crappy food to the world. I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to have the pharmaceutical sponsor me, because that's not going to fly. So I need for you guys to also consider becoming an enrolled student in the classroom. So if you can donate $1 or $1,000 a month, your time, your talent, your treasure, whatever you can donate to the classroom, or even go in my Shop Now bag, because those are my affiliate groups that I align my intention with, and that helps out with the classroom as well. So do whatever you can to help out the classroom. Today we have Matt Beaudreau in the classroom, and we're talking about how to create these responsible adults, children, healthy children, so that they become whole adults. And even if you feel, well, that didn't happen to me, well, at least you can be the one. You can be a generational pattern shifter that will, the buck stops here, and my kids are going to be better off because of what happened to me. I'm going to learn what to do or not to do from our family members. And so now we have Matt that's taking on that baton and starting up schools all over the world to help us raise our children as whole adults. Now, I'm sure that every time you say, I have these schools, and a lot of people would love, but their limiting belief says, well, I can't afford it, so therefore I'm going to stick with what this is easy. But share a little bit about what you're doing so that people from all walks of life can share in your philosophy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, I do hear that all the time of we can't afford it. And I think sometimes that's true. And I think sometimes it's a matter of priority, because we have been trained to believe that quote unquote school should be free. I'm paying for it anyways out of my taxes. And I always tell families, yeah, that's great. I go back to kind of that McDonald's example and go, so if your taxes all of a sudden paid for 3 free meals a day for your young hero to just have McDonald's and that's all they were going to eat, would you just go ahead and do that too? Or would you, make it a priority to go ahead and spend some money to actually buy real food to make sure that their health, is there? And
or
that's
grow
kind of the way I
it,
look at it, right?
Or grow it.
Or grow it. That's exactly right. So, the schools that we have, and really, I don't even like using the word school, because there's already this preconceived notion of what that means. Mm-hmm. And we all have this kind of religion that's built into our mind about what school looks like. Yeah. We use that term, but really this is a workplace for young people. It is a workplace to develop, utmost human potential and the utmost character and responsibility, and, to really unlock genius in these young heroes. Helping people launch these schools, we've tried to get the price down to really where we're operating at about $1,500 to $2,000 a year per learner. That's what we're trying to drive the prices down to where we can operate at that level, so that we can turn around and go to the community and go, look, this actually is affordable for anybody. We can make this accessible for anybody as long as the parents have the right mindset. I started a 501c3. I've got a foundation that, if people are like, hey, I'd love to scholarship some heroes. I live in Chicago. We've got some of the campuses there, but, currently their tuition is, $15,000 a year. We started a nonprofit so that if people want to donate through that and we can scholarship, heroes that way, we'll do it. Like, we're working hard to make sure that this is accessible to everybody. Mm-hmm. And then if people don't have the campuses, near them, or truly have a need that we're not able to meet, but they're willing to maybe educate at home, that's another vertical that we provide, is like, hey, look, here's how to do that at home at a world-class level. And here's a community that you can connect with to have continuous support and have continuous resources every single month, right? We just want to make it non-negotiable that you have no excuse not to be able to raise a strong, resilient young human.
I love it. I love it. And so they can go to apogeestrong.com, apogeestrong.com. And again, if you are a subscriber, you already have Matt's information. My goal is to, like I said before, I already raised my children. Now my grandchildren come, and I can only impact them a certain amount because their parents are their parents. But what I always say that, if we want to end disease, teach children how to have good nutrition, not just good nutrition, optimal nutrition. And why is sugar bad for you? Why is fructose corn syrup the worst thing you could put in your body? Why is soda? It's like all these things. I remember Dr. Joel Fuhrman said that when his child was 5, they were at an event, like a school program, and his 5-year-old was telling him, Daddy, they have cookies, that they tried to offer me a cookie and they wanted me to eat it. And it was disgusting. 5-year-old. That's the mentality that children need to have.
You can do, and you can normalize. My kids are the exact same thing. If there's somebody brings a quote unquote treat to school for the birthday, right? They're like, man, that's not, why do people reward their kids, reward or treat them with stuff that's poisonous to them? Like, I don't understand. I mean, that's where they look at it and they go, how is that a reward? How are you rewarding yourself with that? Right. That's a mentality that, again, as long as you're living that by example every single day, you're putting that out there. So I agree. I love that.
Yeah. I call my food to live for, because people say, oh, this is to die for. Yep, it is. Yep, it is. And my food is to live for. So it's good too. So, but anyway, and I, like I said, I go by the 80-20 rule, 90-10 rule. And so I'm not a Nazi when it comes to my nutrition, but I certainly, when I say I fell off the bandwagon, it's not even close to the normal person's bandwagon,
it's redefining our relationship with that, right? And there's again, direct correlation to our cultural relationship we have with food is very similar in food and health. It's very similar in my mind to what we've got in terms of education.
Yeah.
Right? It's redefining that relationship where it's like, oh, you're shaming me because I want to eat this. No, well, if you understand that food has a hormonal impact on your body, and you want to go, hey, I'm just going to reward my kid every once in a while. Would you reward them with methamphetamine every once in a while? Would you reward them with that? Oh my gosh, no, I'd be a horrible parent. Well, it's just, you're rewarding them with a chemical that is going to induce a specific response in their body. So start to look at it in a different way, right? And that's the same thing with education. It's like, oh, well, it's good, they're going to be fine as long as they have that, as long as they go to school. No, you got to redefine fine. Nobody wants fine for their kids, if you're honest. Nobody wants fine. You want great. And if the conveyor belt school design is specifically designed to be the antithesis of real human development, and it's designed to actually mentally enslave somebody, which it is, then why would you want to risk that and then hope somehow that your kids are going to then break out of it later after they've got 18 years of bad habits built up? Like, we just need to redefine these relationships. Yes, it's harder. Yes, it takes more responsibility on your side, but so what? Like, it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
It is. It's so worth it. It is so worth that discipline. Yes. My parents weren't, my dad was disciplined. He was in the military. My mom wasn't very disciplined. Yeah. And I've seen certain members in my family, and I'm not necessarily in my own family, that discipline could be the key word to a healthy lifestyle or not a healthy lifestyle. But what saved me was that my mom put me in dance. I wanted to dance. I used to twirl in my little tippy toes since I was 5 years old. Yeah. And one day my mom asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. My sister sang, my brother played sports, and I just was the middle child that, was lost. And so I said, I want to dance. And she put me in dance. And let me tell you, you need to have a lot of discipline when you learn a sport, or you dance, or you sing, or whatever it is. So I want to encourage all parents to put their children in extracurricular activities, because it is so important to bring that discipline to that child. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
It's so the beauty of those things, of those extracurriculars, of those sports, right? Because I'm a huge advocate for people playing sports too, right? It is it's not just the development of the personal discipline, it's the understanding at that point that you have given a person a goal and a purpose, right? So whatever that looks like as a dancer, you have a goal of getting better at a specific move or a goal at competing, right? You have a purpose, you have something that you're looking forward to every day, every week, whatever that is, that you're going to go accomplish and get better at. That is tapping into our DNA, right? That is how we are designed. We are designed to have a purpose to go after, to want to grow, to want to get better at something, to set a goal and to strive for it. So it's a microcosm of who we are as a species, period. So we need that and that's why we have so many young people who are hurting, because we're eliminating those goals. We're eliminating any real opportunity for them to struggle and work on something and thrive and then overcome. And that's where self-confidence comes from, because he failed at something before, but then you got back on the horse and you did it and you made progress and you started to stack those wins. And now you've got confidence, right? We're depriving our young people of that. And it's literally ingrained in our DNA. That's why I'm such a big proponent of that, because it just taps into that for us. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So we have, I just want to spend the rest of the time really talking about the rules, these
Sure.
rules that are, we used to have the rules I'd shared with the rules that we had in our family, and the title that Robert wrote on there was rules to live by ... or die. so it's or die, so and we take them out once in a while. We laugh now about it, like taking one Twinkie, not 10 Twinkies,
That's so funny.
Daddy makes me do that. Daddy lets me do that when Daddy's traveling. No, here's the rule right here. Rule number 7. So
Right.
share some
That's
of your rules that, and how long did it take your family to come up with these rules?
Yeah, I had the benefit of having my oldest was at one of my campuses. So she was familiar with kind of the whole process, at that point. And then my youngest was very little. I mean, he was just barely talking at that point. So as we developed him, it was a relatively quick conversation around the dinner table kind of deal, where we sort of just, and I kind of was the scribe and wrote down. And then the next dinner I came to it and just went, okay, so this is kind of what I'm summarizing. Does this sound good? We made a couple tweaks. So within a matter of a day or two, we had our set. And then I had a friend of mine design this kind of beautiful frame where it has the family rules and has everything listed, right? So it's smack dab in the middle. You walk into our house and you see it. It is right there on the wall.
So let's go. We got about 10 minutes in the podcast, and then we can elaborate later on.
You bet. I'll give you the list, and if there's any you want me to expand upon,
you can explain them all. You can just go ahead and go.
I'll go super brief, on it. So the first one is be honest, starting with yourself. So there's the double, entendre of of course, being honest. We don't lie to each other. And so that's another thing on the parenting side. We don't lie to our kids, and they know that. That includes, and again, we get flack for this, like we never did Santa. We don't lie to them, period.
I love that.
Ever. Right. And so they know that. They know we'll always be honest with them. So we want them to do the same. But the caveat is, of course, be honest with yourself. Where do I need to grow? What do I need to take responsibility for? So rule number 2 is to be a copycat. And that is, talked about that a little bit earlier. There are patterns of success that humanity leaves you. There are amazing humans in our lives, mentors, friends, other family members that are doing amazing things, that have phenomenal beliefs, have phenomenal success, whatever that looks like. Humanity leaves patterns. And so being a copycat means following what those patterns are. If somebody's ridiculously happy, let's deconstruct why. And then can we follow a similar pattern and take that and put it into our own life? If somebody is, ridiculously successful in a certain endeavor, why? What were the steps they took? And can I repeat those steps in any way, right? So it's following those patterns of success. Being an emotional ninja, we talked about that, not being driven by your emotions, understanding them and doing the best you can to detach where you can and to try to be objective as if you were watching somebody else. What would you have them do? Okay, maybe I can step back in and make that, make that shift. Being the hardest worker in the room, self-explanatory right there. We just very much believe in putting forth the effort, and that as long as you're working on helping others to the highest degree, and you're doing so more than anybody else in the room, you'll always be providing value and you'll always have opportunities. Being the kindest person in the room, again, self-explanatory. The biggest caveat we talk about with that is not getting stomped on or taken advantage of. We do not believe in that whatsoever. I will not be taken advantage of, but I'll be the kindest and most giving person in any room that I walk into, as long as that's not being violated. Rule number 6 is no complaining. Fix it. Don't complain about something. And if it's worth complaining about, then it's worth finding a solution. That one's pretty easy.
Love that one. Well, my whole workshop is built on I am the solution, so
that's right.
I resonate with that one. Yeah.
Dang right. Well, that was how I was at schools, right? I could complain all day about how schools aren't set up for human development for young people, or I can provide a solution. Is it hard to start a school? Yeah. Is it hard to start multiple? Yeah. But was it worth it? Yeah. Because don't complain, fix the problem. Think because most people won't. That's the next rule. Think because most people won't. It's just, not being stuck in your ways, not assuming that you're always right. It's thinking through, okay, what are my beliefs? Why do I believe that? And what are the actions I should take if that's what I truly believe? How should my actions line up with that? Most people don't do that. They react. We think and act proactively. Right. And so that's rule number, what
7.
was that?
Now
7 right
we're
there.
going to
So
8
rule
now.
number 8. Rule number 8, thank you, Jocko Willink. It's discipline equals freedom. It goes back to that whole concept of discipline, right? If you are disciplined in your life, you have the ultimate amount of freedom. So my kids know responsibility comes first and freedom is the other side of that coin. Rule number 9 for us is Memento Mori. And that sounds like this fixation with, it literally translates into remember that you will die. And it sounds, people, oh my gosh, you're teaching your kids to be fixated with death. No. We want to be fixated on life. Remembering that this ride ends means don't waste your time. Don't waste time. Don't take a day and go to bed and go, man, I didn't do anything for anyone or move anything forward. Like take each day as a gift and go forward and make it the best day you've ever had. Rule number 10 is you are personally responsible. So it goes back to what we're talking about. You are responsible for your life. You are exactly where you have decided to be. So take responsibility for being, who you want to be, for changing the way you want to change, for making the impact that you want to make. You're always personally responsible for that. And then rule number 11 for us, the final one, is doing the right thing is always the right thing. You do not sacrifice your integrity, period.
Wow. That is awesome. That is awesome. Consistency and what I get from all your rules is the heart of being a gentle servant. And I call it being a foot washer. I love washing people's feet. And that is, that is the ultimate that the lowest does. And that's what Jesus did for all of us too, wash his disciples' feet, even the feet of his betrayer. And that's what people don't even think, that, we have in this cancel culture today, whereas if you don't believe what I believe, I'm going to shut you down. I'm going to censor you. I am going to mock you and make you feel less than. What advice do you give to parents that find themselves wanting to step it up, but the culture and their friends and, what are people going to think if I change the norm? What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, you are going to get that. So that's, I wish I could tell you, well, here's how to avoid that. That would be cool if I could say that to you, but I would be lying to you. You are going to get that. As soon as you start to challenge the status quo, you've got to understand truth is never popular. It never has been. So you do have to emotionally and kind of mentally prepare for the fact that even in a loving way, if you lovingly do something that is against the status quo, it is against the norm, you will lose some family and friends. And you've got to prepare yourself to not take that as a personal attack. You've got to understand that just might be where they are. You've got to offer up civil discourse and be able to say, look, this is why I believe what I believe. This is why I'm kind of shifting over here. This is why I'm changing my mind on this. And then you got to let the chips fall where they may. I always tell parents, you're kind of like, when you come upon something like that, you are being, you're kind of like Noah, right? You're going, look, I really feel like this is the right thing. Here's why. So I'm going to go ahead and build this big giant boat. I am going to invite you to come along with me. I would love for you to come, but you got to understand, most people aren't going to. And you've got to end up being okay with that. You've got to let the chips fall where they may, over there. And it does impact relationships sometime. And that's, that is, to me, the sacrifice of losing a relationship. If somebody chooses to sever a relationship because they no longer agree with one thought or aspect of your life, but you're trading that to really go to what you believe God has designed you to do, to really go after who you believe you have been designed to be, to go after the relationship with your spouse or with your kids, and to have those exponentially grow. Well, gosh, man, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make that.
It is true. Sometimes you need to care more about the person than you do about the relationship. And so, well done, Matt. I am excited for what you're doing in the world to create a better place. And I want to encourage all of you to check out his website, apogeestrong.com. And let's continue the conversation. So for those of you who are listening on podcasts, you can join and watch the whole class and after in the Teacher's Pet Corner as well. So Matt, thank you so much for being in the classroom today. And I'm here for you too. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Matt Beaudreau wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay, so I've got some questions here for you. Any tips for grandparents? Our children are doing a great job raising their children. That's their children. But what is your advice for grandparents?
It's a really good one. It's a unique situation because you do want, it's the same thing. It's almost like you're wanting to parent those kids really, really hard, but you're watching somebody else parent them. And so whether those are your grandkids or whether they're somebody else's kids, just in general, really the only thing you can do is to lead by example, be open to civil discourse and conversation. So if there's something you really see that you think you need to address, then you've got to make sure you've got a good established relationship with whomever you want to address it with, right? So if it's your own kids and you want to address a certain thing, you got to make sure that relationship is solid. Otherwise, you're going to cause fights. It's going to fall on deaf ears. So get into the habit of having good, meaningful, deep conversations around any number of topics that don't have anything to do with their kids, right? Learn how to have a great political conversation or religious conversation or whatever those things are that were supposed to be taboo that really we should all just be able to have great conversations about. Get in the habit of having those. And then there'll be a trust factor in there, because if you've got rules of engagement set for a good conversation, we follow the rules, well, then the topic itself ends up being irrelevant. We can kind of talk about anything as long as we have an established set of rules of what a good conversation looks like. Establish those together, establish those habits, and then you can bring in the conversation of, oh, hey, well, let's talk about the kids.
I want to go back to some of the rules that you have. And it's almost like the Beatitudes, be kind, be an emotional ninja, be honest, and be a copycat. So when you're saying these Beatitudes in some way or form, there's a level of comparison. I am the kindest person in the room, or I am the hardest worker in the room. How do we keep that comparison in balance to becoming more of an egoic, oh, I'm the better of it's a comparison? How do you keep that ego in balance in your community and in your home?
Yeah, that's a really good conversation to have. And those are, there's different ways we will try to launch various conversations on that. And from the academic part of me, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll actually utilize literature to be examples of that. And so the short answer is we have a lot of conversations around your job is to be the best version of yourself and to be a better version of yourself yesterday. There's always going to be people that are better than you at everything. There's always going to be people that are worse at everything. There's going to be people that tell you you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. There's going to be people that tell you you suck. Neither of those are true, by the way. You're not the greatest thing ever, and you're far from the worst thing ever. Your job is to be the best possible version of yourself and figure out who God intended you to be, so that when he gets there, he's like, yeah, man, you maxed it out. You maxed out what you got, right? So we have those specific conversations all the time. The literature part of that is, again, it's the consistency part where we're diving into, a lot of times classics or character driven, some of the, Connor Boyack is a good friend of mine who writes a series called The Tuttle Twins. That's a great series for young people to dive into. And so we'll utilize those kind of things to look at, to highlight character patterns that mimic what we're talking about, to make sure that the comparison part will either stay within ourselves or we'll compare to a fictional character and go, well, how would they have handled that? Because that's a great way to start to figure out your decision making too, right? Is how would they have done that? How would they have handled that? Interesting. They faced a similar situation and this was the choice they made. So the parallel here, I should probably make this choice, right? And so that natural human tendency to compare stays within comparing to yourself or these fictional characters to try to stay out of the ego, because it's a tough thing. We all get sucked into that.
Yeah. And how do you keep the child? How do you keep the child from that you had mentioned the, getting sucked into the ego and getting, how do you get the child or the person that you're working with to see outside of the circumstance? Maybe they're focused on this is the way that it needs to be. How do you encourage a child to look beyond their imagination even?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So it's easier to get the child to see it than it is most adults. That's why I love working with them. They're more readily going to be okay with it. And I don't, by the way, when I try to get them to see outside of something, I don't ever assume that that's a one-time conversation. I don't assume that I'm coming in as the sage on the stage. It's going to go, look, here's why you're seeing it wrong. Here's how to see it right. So do that now, right? You do that better with questions and go, interesting. That's an interesting perspective. So tell me how you came to that perspective. Okay, interesting. When you're speaking about that, that reminds me of, again, I might take it back to literature. That reminds me of Pip and, the decision he had to make around here, there, what do you think about that? Do you see parallels? Are those similar? And I'm okay walking away from a decision after I've questioned young people to get them to think. I am okay with walking away without us having come to an answer together. My job is to plant a seed, right? It's to open a door. My job is to be the Morpheus to their Neo, right? I want to just open the door and invite them to think a little further and explore a little further. And if I do that consistently and trust them with all of these other components that we have in place, the reality is they're going to get to a great decision, but it's so much more powerful if they get there on their own because I've asked good questions. Do you want somebody to get to the truth on their own in a matter of a month because you've asked the right questions? Or do you want somebody to just go ahead and go bleh and blurt out something that you want them to say in a matter of minutes, but it never actually sticks and comes back to bite you years later? Of course, you want them to get to the truth. So you don't do that by jabbering at them. You do it by asking really, really good questions.
How do you keep from saying this is right, this is wrong? How do you, because it's what we were brought up with. Our parents said, you're going to do this because I said so, or you're going to do that. If you want to live another day, this is how you do it, that type of thing. There wasn't abuse in my family, but I know that there are abuse in other families where if you don't do it, you got beaten.
Of course, man. Well, it comes back to how you're living too, right? If I am saying to my kids, it is never okay to hit somebody. And they go, okay, great. And then they're like, gosh, I forgot to clean up my room. And I'm like, what? Again, it's that hypocrisy, right? What I'm saying holds no weight. But if what I'm saying matches how I live and they see it all the time, I don't have to beat them down with it. I just go, well, this is kind of how we live, and this is what we do, and these are the choices we make, and here's why. And I'll walk them through choices that man, you know, this is interesting. I had a conversation at work, or I was on the podcast and this person said this. I responded this way, and I think I did that. What do you think about that? Right. And it's just those conversations. Again, consistency is your best friend. If you are consistently living that way and having those conversations and asking questions and understanding that questions are infinitely better than giving the answers, you're going to maintain this naturally curious young human who is going to continue to come to you for advice, who's going to see you as somebody who doesn't have it all figured out, but is wanting to, which makes them want to be that person too, right? They're like, well, dad doesn't have it all figured out. He's very clear about that, but he works on it. Well, I don't have to have it all figured out, but I'm going to work on it too. Right. Again, they model what they see in that regard. It's consistency, man.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to perceive, raising a child. One last question. And it's, I think that there are, I've spoken to young parents that are raising their children with cloth diapers in nature. They're stepping outside the box, outside the norm. But then there's other parents who use the phone as babysitters, don't care about their nutrition, or may expect the education system to train their child and indoctrinate their child. What is your advice to the parents that really need to start parenting their children?
Yeah. This is where it's tough, because there are so many that are on that side. And I always, I tell all parents, look, man, again, no perfect parents. Everybody else needs to raise my kid, including the phones, and the school is way over here. Being the way over here where you're like, look, my 4-year-old is completely sovereign, and if he wants to make this decision, right, that doesn't work either. So I wish I could say I had the magic words for these guys over here, but I don't. I literally, I don't. I try to be as kind as I can to say, look, you're caged. You are the story I use with them. I'm like, you're the story of the elephant that's been trained, in Thailand. And the way you're trained is when you were very little, somebody put a rope around you and then tied you to this stake, and you couldn't pull away because you were too small. Mm-hmm. Now you're bigger and you could pull away from it. But the reality is your mind has you caged to where as soon as that rope is around you, you feel like you can't pull it. And then the sad thing is you're going to perpetuate that cycle, and you're just going to go ahead and put the rope around your young heroes as well, right? You've got to be able to realize that first before you're ever going to be able to do anything. Because if you don't realize that you're in a cage, you don't realize, it's that old saying of a bird, birds born in captivity think birds who fly outside of the cage are crazy. Mm-hmm. If you don't know any different, you're never going to get to be that bird outside of the cage. You've got to recognize your own inadequacies first. Otherwise, these conversations are falling on deaf ears.
It's tough. It's tough to, and I appreciate your honesty. Like, I just don't know. I just don't know. It's and who knows, who knows what the right answer is. I thought when I was parenting, I did the perfect job at the time. And I've gone back and not that I was a horrible parent, but there are certain things that you say and that you do, and that may not support them, may have come from fear. Right. And so I've gone back to all my kids and said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry if I did this, or when I did this or that, and will you please forgive me? And I was able, when I was going through my transformation, and later on became a life coach. But when I was going through that awareness of how powerful the mind is, and how my fear kept my children small, and when we need to be able to be like, I love that, be honest with yourself. That's where we need to start, is that self-honesty, more necessary than the honesty with our children. Because once we're honest with ourselves, then we can be honest with others. It's
That's
the
right.
opposite. We think
That's
that we can be honest with everybody. Go ahead.
Right. No, God, that's so good. It's so true. And it's that, the hard part about getting parents to realize they've got to get out of there and getting to be honest. We'll try to tell them stories and give them stories to it, because humans are emotional first and then logical way after that, and so we try to tell them stories to evoke emotion, but those those the emotional attachments to what has always been, or what they know, or what they're just so strong. So using those stories is so powerful to try to get them around there. But gosh, you're right. Like, we've got to, eventually it comes down to the person. It comes down to the personal responsibility. I've got to take responsibility for looking in here, for going back and forgiving myself for where I've messed up, and really trying to take ownership of going forward. And it's so hard to get people to understand that.
Yeah, it's what a great conversation today. I really enjoyed this, because children, I love children. I think I was born a teacher, and I must have been a teacher, an educator somewhere along the way. It's something that my passion. I love teaching children, because it's like my time to kind of like not validate myself, redeem myself from some of the errors I made in the past. So how can people find your schools? And by the way, before you answer that question, on July 4th, that's when they're going to launch the homeschool the homeschool online. So please take advantage of that at apogeestrong.com. What would you say?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. If you go to apogeestrong.com, that's where, that started out as a mentorship program for young men. Myself and a gentleman named Tim Kennedy, who a lot of people know, started that mentorship program for young men, where we have CEOs and actors and generals and Navy SEALs and musicians and comedians and all these good human beings coming in and pouring into these young people. It started there, and we're adding more and more verticals, adding the homeschool course that is launching, in the community around that, the parenting course that is launching. And then we use that as a platform to let people know about our schools. The schools themselves, you can actually go to actonacademy.org.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, ma'am. actonacademy.org. So it's ACTON academy.org. And you can see all of our schools around the world. You can do a finder. We got about 300 schools right now, 41 states, 26 countries, I think. So
any in Florida?
Yes, ma'am. We do have some in Florida. I'd have to look up exactly where, but yes, ma'am. We've got some in Florida, and we've got some more great entrepreneurs we're partnering with to launch in a couple of other neighborhoods out there too. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to learn
check
more.
out both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you heard it here. So now it's time to take this information and share it. It's time to take this information and put it into action, because thought without action is just empty. And now it's time for us to really take a good look. How did we do as parents? Not to condemn ourselves, because we need to know, ultimately, we did the best we could with what we have. We didn't intentionally, unless you did, but we don't intentionally set out to hurt our children. But, it's time to sit down with our kids and say, hey, how could I have done this better? Or maybe, how are you doing it better? How are you, how can we, bridge the gap here and work together, parents, grandparents, to just love one another and accept one another? Because I really do believe that even if you don't have everything in common, or, that you don't have anything in common, that you think you don't, there's always something that you do. And it's to look for that will end the battles, end the wars, and will help people say, oh, is that how you believe? Cool. As opposed to, you're a jerk, or you're an idiot, or which is what's happening today. So I want to encourage you guys to start thinking outside the box, be curious instead of critical, and go to apogeestrong.com to learn more. Thank you so much, Matt, for everything that you're doing. And I'm looking forward to maybe having another conversation with you.
Anytime. Honor and pleasure is mine. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. And for all of you that are watching, we will see you tomorrow. I think it's Terry Wall tomorrow. We're going to have Terry Wall in the classroom. So I look forward to seeing you guys.